Oh, boom. We are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. We have a fun and exciting guest. We have Ed Chang, head of gaming at Avalanche. Ed, thanks for jumping on and joining us today. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Sorry, it was we had a few reschedules here and there and running a little late, but glad to be here.
Oh, no, that's good. We know this is a busy and booming sector, so it's to be expected. Um, we usually like to dive in, get a little bit personal. Tell us about yourself first, and then, yeah, we'll get to where we are today.
Yeah, so we could start with where I'm at now. I've been at Owl Labs for about 5 months now. I head up our gaming biz dev. The BD team is probably 20 or so folks all across the board here. But I lead our gaming biz dev and do a lot of our NFT deals as well. But before this, I had spent over 10 years in the gaming industry, the Web2 gaming industry, let's say. So I did, worked at startups, started a small influencer agency, did a stint in venture, but most recently was at EA for about 5 years, leading strategy for our esports group. So mainly working on games like Apex Legends and FIFA and Madden. That was a lot of fun. But how that coincides with my crypto journey is I've always kind of held some crypto as like a diversified investment. Never really like looked too much into it. And probably about a year and a half ago, started really diving deep into blockchain. So it took me to DeFi, to NFTs, to gaming, and around when Axie Infinity started really blowing up, and just seeing what the future potential could unlock for Web3 gaming has been really exciting. And so, really wanted to skate to where the proverbial, puck was going, and joined Avalanche, and it's been a really fun ride. And in a short 5+ months, we've done a lot, but there's still a long way to go.
Like that you keep your ice skating theme niche or niched out to
I didn't
Avalanche
even
there.
notice that, but you know what?
Yeah,
Let's just say I did it on purpose.
on purpose. Yeah, well, that's what happens. You just kind of come up with it as it goes along. So, I'm new to gaming. So maybe let's go back a little bit into the history. Tell us about your relationship with esports and how you think this starts to relate with the gaming sector. We'll kind of start there.
Yeah, so I let's go way back. When StarCraft 2 came out, I was playing that a lot, and around that time, I saw that you could actually like kind of like you could download the replay of different matches, and people were just casting over those replays like of pros playing on YouTube. And there were two guys that I got sucked in. I would just watch these replays over and over again, and that led to some of the early streaming sites like Ustream and Livestream, where some of these pro StarCraft 2 players were live streaming, and I was sucked in. And I was working a full-time job at the time, but I was like, this is so fun. So I started doing like some consulting on like the BD side with some of the big esports teams, and that led into like relationships with IGN and Justin TV, which became Twitch. So I got my foot in the door, and then led to a whole new world of kind of like starting an agency and then going full time into gaming, and then with esports kind of really taking off and all these different gaming publishers wanting to get a piece of that action in pie. That's how I found myself at EA, and one thing led to another, and here I am. I would say the other kind of really interesting piece that you're seeing right now is traditionally, these large esports teams that have mainly operated in like the top tier games like League of Legends and Counter-Strike and Valorant and Overwatch and things like that. I think they're starting to look at the Web3 space because of all this kind of hype and kind of what the economics can unlock. And so you've got this interesting dynamic where you see a lot more esports teams are looking to become kind of guilds, or offer that feature and functionality. And then now the biggest guilds are trying to become kind of esports teams and build this like influencer marketing and user acquisition funnel that they can offer to games.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we thought was interesting too, was the kind of the merger, that seemed like the gaming space was fairly wall gardened in terms of who the developers were versus who the gamers were. You mentioned the phenomenon of even watching people game. This kind of stunned me for a bit because I'm a musician, but there's a more intrinsic part of, I think, gaming that people like, regardless of culture, or everyone has games. We all have games in our culture of some kind, shape, or form. So we know that it's a very deep niche as well. Do you feel that the esports teams, like, what does the guild look like in a few years from now? How does the esports team evolve through this guild process? Like, what does the galvanized version look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. I think even if you put it in a vacuum, esports teams themselves are trying to figure out who they are today, right? There's a question of, are they like traditional sports teams where they field, the top teams in the world in respective games, and do they function like the New York Yankees or the Golden State Warriors? But you're starting to see a lot of them branch out and offer things like an apparel business, right? Or their own bespoke products, or they're bringing on influencers to create content and have more of a Twitch streaming arm. So I think they're still trying to figure that out. Guilds are as well. Guilds started out by recruiting hundreds, if not thousands, of Axie Infinity scholars, buying a bunch of assets, writing up a smart contract and kind of deploying that. As the emissions and the profitability of Axie has fallen, I think they've branched out into other games like Peg Axie or Crabata or other games like that. But there's this larger kind of existential question of who are we and where are we going, right? So guilds then pivoted, or not pivoted, but also added on this arm of investing into projects, right? So investing into seed rounds and private rounds of up and coming Web3 gaming projects. And I think this next iteration is to figure out, how do you turn on this user acquisition funnel? Like, one of the most attractive things, if I were, an entrepreneur building a Web3 game today, is I would find partners that could help me unlock how to bring in retail and normies into my game, right? If I had to guess, there might be 15 million wallets that are playing Web3 games today. There's 2.7 billion Web2 gamers. So if you can even make a small dent or move towards that, then I think you have a lot of high upside, because your funnel is going to be pretty wide at the top for a Web3 game.
Yeah, we have a strong intuitive feeling here that not just the gaming sector, but it unlocks a much, much larger kind of conversation. We were super excited about the on-ramp for people that didn't necessarily have traditional bank accounts or identification. And then this looked also like a system of building identity and reputation in the games. We're kind of fascinated by the question of, where does sovereign identity evolve? And this is where we were kind of excited about the way the guilds were performing as well, just around how do players share, how much time do they spend in each of these ecosystems, what kind of participant are they within the game. You brought up something here. We were big fans of Avalanche. Anyone that's here in the Bear family knows that we've been a fan of what's been being built there for a while. We think it's going to solve a lot of problems. One of the things we think that it works fairly well is the C chain and your ability to spend kind of in game. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the marketplace in terms of Avalanche and games building right now?
Yeah, we're in an interesting spot. We've got a pool and a growing base of developers who are deploying their games mainly on, like you said, the C chain, which is our public main chain. We've got a lot of games kind of like Crabata, which is like an idle NFT game that's transitioning to a battle mode with crab NFTs. We've got other games announced, like the Chicken guys have a game, Hopper, made by the Avalanche Party Animals, and these are all kind of more of like the casual and idle games. We've got other games that have been announced that are building, and so as we're moving to diversify our GameFi portfolio, with AA core experiences, we've got MMOs, we've got trading card games, we've got first-person shooters, and everything in between. We're in between of like games that have launched, and then we've got a lot more that are coming starting latter half of this year, and we're we're continually talking to more games to bring them on and to help them launch. And so I think this next 6 months to a year to 2 years is going to be really fun to watch, to see how this ecosystem grows, especially as games start to launch their subnets, right? Games like DeFi Kingdoms and Crabata, Castle Crush, and things like that.
Yeah, we like the DeFi Kingdom on ramp too, just the stickiness for the financial conversation and the education that's normally a difficult part to overcome, makes it very simple to kind of jump in and find yourself within the game really, really easily. There's a fun question I heard recently. What's one of the things you have most conviction on where everybody thinks you're wrong, or like the majority do still?
It's a good question. I'll say this. I think the biggest winners in Web3 gaming are probably going to be native teams who are building right now. I think there's definitely a place for these large Web2 publishers, and I think they can be successful. But I think with time to market and speed and understanding the space, I think some of the early teams today are going to be the winners versus a more traditional Web2 publisher that has to kind of rethink how they're doing everything and hire and think about, you know, regulations and KYC and a lot of this other stuff that they are required to think about.
Yeah, we've seen this in many sectors where with the older, the bigger, the slower, the less like you are to take a risk on the primary revenue stream, the more likely you are to kind of die in that same river.
Yeah, exactly. I think it does require you to fundamentally rethink how you interact with your customer base, right? Or your player base, how you think about the economics, how you even spend the money that you do have. So, not saying it's impossible at all. And we've met with some really smart kind of traditional devs who are playing in this space. But we've also seen some really impressive kind of Web3 native teams that are just shipping right now.
Yeah, it seems like they might be a bit faster to adopt some of the uniqueness that the DeFi sector itself offers, which is ultimately the most profitable aspect of of the whole thing. It's just the economic rails are so efficient in comparison with something else. What's your thoughts about IP ownership within games like the Other Deeds launch? How does some of this evolve as time goes forward in terms of like what happens if I bought a Cartman? It's kind of one of the questions I've been asking myself is if I get into some cool brand IP early and you snag up some characters that are part of this and they become hyper popular, how do you feel a lot of that's going to evolve?
Yeah, I think there's a separation probably of like a Web3 native IP versus just like a general traditional IP. So if I think about, and at EA, we worked, EA is known for a lot of the IP licensed products, everything from sports to like Star Wars to other things. So I think in a traditional world, there's a lot of guardrails put in place of like if and when you can use this asset at what time and what you can go on, what do you sell it for, what those royalties are, how long you have that license. And so I think it's hard to kind of port that over to a Web3 world where everyone's kind of like, I want to own this asset. I get commercial rights to go do stuff with my NFT. Let's put that one aside for now. But like, your other side example, I think they had some bigger issues in like the IP itself. I think it was a great test or attempt at kind of building beyond that Bored Apes universe. I think we'll see a lot of crossovers, especially when you think about figuring out how to the cold start issue of how do you bring more eyeballs to your project. We see this in the early days right now where early NFT mints will partner with other hyped NFT mints to give away, allow list spots or maybe doing collabs. And then going one step further, I think you'll start to see them work together on porting over kind of assets from different worlds as an homage, if you will, or a partnership. We have a game called Ragnarok that's like an online MMORPG, and I know they have some of those. They've basically teased at some of these partnerships or integrations where you can take certain assets and put them in the game or utilize them. And so I don't know if I believe in a like fully composable 360 future where, I can take my shoes in a football game and go port that over to like a first person shooter, because I think there's a lot of limitations around physics and graphics and the game engines and things like that. But I do think that there can be like standards or other things you can work towards to kind of build that narrative of, and you start to see something that I hate using the M word, but you start to see like how a metaverse can maybe be constructed because, taking things and partnering and bringing them into different worlds is a really cool experience.
Yeah, it was part of this delivery model to the community member as well. I think, after everyone's been called a user for so long, there's one of the unique prospects here is that, if you bought an ape and just as an example, because they just did such a stunning job of this working, was the feedback layer of people's interest within the brand, and then the growth of the value of that brand that it gave back, like getting well, even with the .eth name, it got $15,000 in .eth or ENS tokens at the top of the launch. There's just no other capitalist consumer relationship where after you buy the product or some type of bearing within the brand growth, are you rewarded in any state? Who do you see out there now that's doing something similar? Like who's kind of leading with this? Let's give back to the customer as much as possible model.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about Web3 gaming in general, that's kind of the MO, right? I think one of the really interesting things to me about when Axie had really took off was the fact that they were generating so much revenue and hype and traction off of taking a very small transaction fee in the marketplace, right? The majority of the earnings and the value generated was towards those that were playing the game, right? And making a living in some cases off of that. I think as we go more towards, again, these more maybe high def AA, AAA experiences, you'll start to see this narrative where it's, we're going to move away from this expectation that everybody puts in $5 and gets $7 back. Maybe we move to something where, hey, this is something that's really fun to play, and I like to spend time in this, like you do for a lot of Web2 games. But you also get upside in the form of the assets, whether that's NFTs in the games that you're playing, and if the game does really well, then that value appreciates. But also in the form of things like tokens or currency, where I've spent a lot of hours in some of these games, and I don't really have too much to show for it other than maybe being decent at a game, or a lot of wasted time, or the enjoyment of playing that game. So I think you'll start to see that a lot more. And then it makes for really interesting things you can do with maybe governance, but also things like UGC, where we've got a game called Shrapnel. It's a AAA like first-person extraction shooter. And one of the cool things they're going to do is they're going to be able to reward map developers who make custom maps, where if people are playing your custom map, you can get rewarded in the game via certain currencies or items. And that's a really cool thing, especially with like how a lot of these early games got bootstrapped and became really popular with things like mods, right?
Yeah, there's the underlying base revenue model of the things that people would already normally buy in the game, and then this supercharging of early identification of the brand IP. This is one of the things I thought early on that like post to earn kind of models like Steam It would be really big. That you would, because people are spending so much time investing in the growth of these mega social networks and effectively get nothing back. Why you're not being rewarded in some way, shape, or form? Because the reward should clearly be there. So when the gaming sector kind of took it over, the increase of the adoption of the UI, the UX design all started to make a lot more sense. Well, one of the things I think I'm interested in is how does the future evolve with so many different chains? I mean, we're big fans of Avalanche, but we're also big fans of Solana, because I just am not tech smart enough. I'm like, well, we're gonna pick a basket of ideas. We love games, but how do you feel about the future and the integration of what's a multi-layer future look like? Is that inevitable?
That's a TBD, I would say. I think a lot of that is probably dependent on kind of the growth of general adoption, but also the growth of the game. Right now, it probably makes sense for games to be deployed natively on a chain, because that's where you can kind of capture that audience, your tokens, and your NFTs and your assets can all sit on the same chain. Especially as games are thinking about maybe even doing a platform approach where you don't just have one game, you have different games and they're connected by a subnet or custom gas tokens and things like that. It's a lot easier there. As the audiences grow larger, and it makes sense to explore what a multi-chain scenario might look like, that's always an option. And then of course the technology behind it is getting a lot better also. So the future is probably something where it's easy to move from chain to chain, to play the different games, to move your assets. And you've got a lot of really cool bridging technologies these days, things like Synapse or Layer Zero or other ones as well, where they're hopefully facilitating this and making it a lot easier to be able to hop from chain to chain.
Yeah, we hope so as well. Those bridges look unstable. So again, maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper into the gaming sector here. As a non-gamer, our main interest here is just the proliferation of potential of sovereign identity and the kind of the tools to end up in the hands of the general community. Well, for you, what's the most exciting part about this kind of gaming Web3 revolution potential? Like you as a participant, as gaming goes forward into the future, what for you, like what are you most excited about?
I think there's a general excitement that I've seen in terms of just this totally new vertical. And there are so many smart teams that are building right now. Even, the deal flow that we're seeing from when I first started to now, it's increased greatly. And the amount of kind of, again, Web2 developers and traditional game publishers that you thought might be much slower to adopt, like there's a lot of people looking at this space. And I think just seeing kind of the upside in terms of allowing you to own your assets and be able to transact them in an independent and free way, but also this idea of kind of creating this new paradigm for how game economics might work and how you structure them and how you reward players for playing your game. Like that at a macro level is really interesting. And then I'm just really excited to see kind of maybe the first glimpses or the first wave of these more like core fun to play games start to launch, because we'll really see, how crypto users will react to them, and then if they can really convert people who maybe aren't crypto native, because that's one reason why I think a lot of these chains are investing really deeply into Web3 gaming, because they see it as a huge opportunity for mass adoption.
And what's your favorite style of gameplay?
I come from, an RTS and a first person shooter background. So that's really interesting to me. What is exciting from maybe a business perspective as well, or just as a casual gamer, I have less time to sit down at my computer and maybe play for an hour or two these days, but I have a lot of time to play games on my phone. And so unlocking and figuring out mobile is going to be really interesting. And we're seeing a lot of games, or more and more games, that are either going cross-platform and offering mobile as an option, or deploying on mobile. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out. But the ability to take a team, building a very fun to play, like maybe cute art style or very unique art style with some interesting and fun mechanics, and putting that on mobile, I think can also unlock some pretty widespread adoption here.
Yeah, the mobile proliferation is significant numbers, higher than a decent desktop, I would imagine. So I guess we'll put you on the spot here. Out of all the games you think they're launching in the next year on Avalanche, which one's your favorite?
I don't have a flat out favorite. I think I'm excited for a lot of these games. So, in terms of the ones that are launched already and are building, DeFi Kingdoms and Krabata, they're our first two subnets.
Oh, yeah, we were fans of Krabata.
Krabata's launching a battle mode game. I'm a huge fan, obviously, and excited to see what they do there. DeFi Kingdoms is going to be deploying a lot more features to Crystal Vale, and so excited to see where they go there. In terms of more kind of our maybe our core game experiences, I mentioned Shrapnel earlier, the AAA first-person shooter. Ragnarok is one where it's a web-based online MMORPG, and it's like very similar to kind of the Ragnarok Online, like RuneScape type thing that people loved playing growing up. And they just had their NFT reveal, and I'm super excited to see what I got. I haven't seen yet, but it's super hyped, and they've built a really strong community. And then the other one that I can think of right now is a game called Ascenders. So Ascenders is kind of like a Zelda action RPG where you can there's different like player lanes, and you can actually kind of construct different items. And they've released a few kind of mini game demos. They're not launching the full game till next year, but the team just ships, and it's really exciting to see what they've done. And then the last one I'd probably mention right now is we just announced that there's a company called Pocket Worlds, and they actually have kind of a social metaverse today on mobile where they have 2 million MAUs across this metaverse, where there's fashion and there's buildings and there's land. They've announced they're launching on a subnet, and so it'll be exciting to see how they port that over. And then last but not least, Castle Crush, this game that has over 1 million MAUs today. It's a mobile title by one of the top mobile publishers in the world, Wildlife Studios, and they should be launching in the next month or so. So it'll be really exciting to see Avalanche integrated into an existing game, and they've really thought from the ground up how to integrate NFTs and tokens, and we've worked with them pretty closely on that.
Awesome. Yeah, the Bear family will recognize a few of those names. We like keeping up to see what's being launched. Well, I don't want to run over too much time today. I know we were a little late anyways, but we like to keep things kind of short and to the point. We'll invite you back in the future. That way we can touch base on a bunch of these questions again. What's your last thoughts to share? Where can we find you? Those links will be down below. I didn't gather them before the video started today. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but we will have them there later. So you want to kind of lead us out of the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to keep an eye on all things in the ecosystem is our official Twitter. I think it's at Avalanche AVAX. I think. Let me just double check this. Yes, it is at Avalanche AVAX. And then for my personal Twitter, it is at EDC. And it's been a pleasure. Again, sorry we started a little late, but would love to continue this conversation. And thanks for having me.
No, it's awesome. I'm here learning, and it's a lot of fun to build. We get to meet so many wonderful people. We're trying to get on the phone with as many founders and I guess interesting thinkers in the space as possible. And because I don't know anything about games, it makes it really easy for me. I can ask 1,000 stupid questions. Well, thanks for your time today, Ed. Hopefully, we'll get to do it again soon. I'll keep you on the show just for a little bit, a few minutes afterwards before we dive off. Bear family, remember to give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. Leave your questions, your comments down below. Remember to give Ed C a follow and Avalanche. I should hope you already follow them at this point, based off how long we've been enjoying their content. So, anyways, here's the outro. We'll see you on the next one. Look, wait, is that backward? Yeah, it's that. This looks like it's backwards right now, isn't it? Yeah.